On a chilly October evening in 1986, two 9-year-old best friends left their Brighton homes to play, and never returned. What followed would become one of Britain's most haunting murder cases, a crime that shocked the nation, divided a community, and left families searching for justice for more than 3 decades. This is the story of the Babes in the Wood murders, a case of innocence destroyed, lies exposed, and justice delayed for far too long. Nicola and Karen Hadaway were like any two ordinary little girls growing up in Brighton during the 1980s. They lived just a short walk from each other in the neighborhood of Molescombe. Karen was lively, with a sweet smile and an adventurous spirit. Nicola, her best friend, was described as caring and full of energy. Together, they were inseparable. To their parents, they were a picture of childhood innocence, climbing trees, skipping rope, and playing in the local parks. Brighton in the mid-80s was a busy seaside town, filled with the sounds of children playing, neighbors chatting, and families enjoying the community atmosphere. It was the kind of place where parents felt safe letting their children out to play after school. After all, nothing truly bad ever seemed to happen there. Until October 9, 1986. That Thursday afternoon began like any other. Nicola and Karen came home from school, changed out of their uniforms, and asked if they could play outside together. For their parents, it was routine. Kids often played until dusk and then came home for dinner. But as the hours passed, the daylight faded, and there was still no sign of Nicola or Karen. Dinner plates sat untouched. Parents began pacing, checking the streets, calling out their names. By nightfall, panic set in. Karen's mother, Michelle, phoned the police to report the girls missing. What started as a mother's fear quickly escalated into a massive search effort. Police officers, neighbors, friends, and family members all spread out through Brighton, combing the streets, playgrounds, and woodlands nearby. But in the crowd of searchers was a man who held a terrible secret, a man who wasn't there to help, but to hide. His name was Russell Bishop. As the hours turned into an agonizing night, search teams pushed deeper into the surrounding areas of Brighton. Parents shouted the girls' names into the darkness. Flashlights cut through the undergrowth of Wild Park, a sprawling, wooded area less than a mile from where Nicola and Karen lived. Wild Park was a place many children played during the day, but at night, it became an eerie, unsettling landscape. The community searched tirelessly, clinging to the hope that the girls had simply wandered too far and gotten lost. But on the morning of October 10, 1986, those hopes were shattered. Two searchers stumbled across a makeshift den, hidden among the trees in Wild Park. Inside, they found the bodies of Nicola and Karen Hadaway. Both girls had been brutally murdered, strangled and sexually assaulted. It was a discovery so horrifying that some officers and searchers broke down in tears. Parents were shielded from the sight, but word spread fast. The once safe streets of Brighton were suddenly filled with fear, anger, and disbelief. Parents pulled their children indoors. Neighbors whispered in shock. Who could have committed such a monstrous act? And yet, in the days that followed, one man seemed strangely eager to talk about the crime, Russell Bishop. He even claimed he had tried to feel for a pulse on one of the girls. But the constable who had been with him said Bishop never touched the bodies. Suspicion was growing. But without solid evidence, police were left struggling. In December 1986, police officially charged Russell Bishop with the murders of Nicola and Karen. At just 20 years old, Bishop was a petty criminal, known locally for car theft and burglary. He lived just streets away from the girls' homes, and was even friendly with Nicola's father, Barry Fellows. For investigators, he was their prime suspect. The trial began in November 1987 at Lewes Crown Court. The case was followed closely by the public, and the families of Nicola and Karen hoped desperately for justice. Prosecutors argued that Bishop had lured the girls into the park, then carried out the brutal attack. They highlighted his lies, his behavior during the search, and the suspicious details surrounding the crime scene. But the evidence wasn't strong enough. Forensic science in the 1980s was limited, and without DNA, the case relied heavily on circumstantial details. In December 1987, the verdict came back, not guilty. Russell Bishop walked free. The families were crushed. It felt like losing their daughters all over again. For Brighton, it was a devastating blow. The suspected killer was back on the streets, unpunished, and living among them. Just 3 years later, Bishop struck again. In August 1990, 7-year-old Rachael Watts went roller skating near her new home in Whitehawk, Brighton. She was heading to a shop to buy sweets but got lost on her way home. She asked a man for directions. A man bent over a car, appearing to fix it. That man was Russell Bishop. Instead of helping, Bishop forced Rachael into the boot of his car. Terrified, she fought back. In the darkness, she found a hammer and banged desperately on the boot door, even removing her skates to move more easily. But Bishop drove her to Devil's Dyke, a remote beauty spot outside Brighton. There, he assaulted her and attempted to strangle her, leaving her in the gorse bushes to die. But miraculously, Rachael survived. Injured and terrified, she crawled out of the bushes and was rescued by a couple who had come to watch the sunset. Just 3 days later, she identified Bishop in a police lineup. At trial, she testified against him from behind a screen. The press called her the bravest little girl in Britain. This time, Bishop was convicted, found guilty of kidnapping, indecent assault, and attempted murder. In December 1990, he was sentenced to life in prison. For the families of Nicola and Karen, there was some comfort. Bishop was behind bars. But their daughter's murders remained unsolved. Throughout the 1990s, the families of Nicola and Karen never gave up. They demanded answers, but were trapped by the double jeopardy law, which meant Bishop could never be tried for the murders again. It was a cruel reality. They knew he was guilty. But the law protected him. Meanwhile, forensic science continued to advance. DNA profiling was becoming a powerful tool in solving cold cases. One piece of evidence stood out: a light blue Pinto sweatshirt found near the crime scene in 1986. In the 80s, it hadn't been useful. But with new testing, traces of Bishop's DNA and fibers from the girl's clothing were discovered on it. Then, in 2003, the law changed. Double jeopardy was reformed. Now, if new and compelling evidence emerged, retrials were allowed. The door to justice was open once more. In 2016, Bishop was rearrested. His original acquittal was quashed, and he faced a retrial at the Old Bailey in 2018. At the center of the case was the Pinto sweatshirt. DNA evidence linked Bishop to the garment, and fibers connected it to Nicola and Karen. It was the breakthrough investigators had waited decades for. But there was another revelation. Bishop's girlfriend at the time of the murders, Jennifer Johnson, had lied in the 1987 trial. She told police the sweatshirt wasn't his, producing a similar one to throw them off. Her deception had helped him walk free. Now, her lies were exposed. She would later be convicted of perjury and sentenced to 6 years in prison. The jury heard about Bishop's past, how just 3 years after the murders, he had kidnapped and tried to kill Rachael Watts. This was no coincidence. This was the pattern of a predator. Finally, in December 2018, the verdict was read: guilty. Russell Bishop was convicted of murdering Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway. He was sentenced to 2 life terms. After 32 years, justice had at last been served. Bishop spent the rest of his life behind bars. In January 2022, at the age of 55, he died of brain cancer in prison. For the families, it was a moment of closure, but not peace. Nothing could bring Nicola and Karen back. For Rachael Watts, the scars of her ordeal never fully healed. She lived with PTSD, anxiety, agoraphobia, and depression. For decades, her identity was protected. But after Bishop's death, she chose to speak publicly, revealing the truth of what she had endured. Now a mother of 4, she admitted she struggled to give her children independence, haunted by the fear that history might repeat itself. Yet her bravery as a child, testifying against her attacker, had been instrumental in stopping him. The Babes in the Wood murders left an indelible mark on Britain. The case exposed flaws in the justice system, highlighted the power of forensic science, and proved the importance of persistence in the pursuit of truth. Nicola and Karen Hadaway were two innocent girls whose lives were cruelly cut short. And while justice was delayed for more than 30 years, it was not denied. Their story remains a haunting reminder: evil can hide in plain sight, but the truth has a way of emerging, no matter how long it takes. Please like and subscribe.